They vanish into the shadows, they slip through the cracks, and sometimes they were never meant to be caught. I'm AC Roberts, and every week on Wanted, we investigate the killers who got away, both identified and unknown. Some are cold cases frozen in time, while others remain terrifyingly active. We break down the facts, the theories, and the disturbing unanswered questions that keep these cases alive. Who killed Joseph Elwell in a locked room? How did Charles Rogers disappear after the gruesome icebox murders? And could the truth about the Sodder children still be out there? Check out our website, thewantedpodcast.com, to find us on your favorite platform, or follow us on Instagram at The Wanted Podcast for updates and case discussions. Because justice may be blind, but the past is never truly buried.
Hello, listeners! Welcome to Stars of the Golden Age, a show that highlights the lives of legends from film, music, and the birth of television during Hollywood's golden age and the few years surrounding it. I am your host, Erin Carlson. Welcome to part 2 of the story of Lucille Ball. Before I begin, I just want to give a little plug to my Patreon really quick. There is some really fun bonus content available over there, so if you're interested in some more stories, please go check it out. You can see the available options at patreon.com/Stars of the Golden Age podcast. I do want to tell you, though, a few months ago, Apple decided to add on a 30% fee if you sign up through the Patreon app on your iPhone. Nice of them, huh? So if you are an iPhone user, I suggest signing up via the Patreon website to save on that hefty fee. Once you've joined, you can use the app as usual for the bonus content. The March bonus episode was The History of the Casting Couch, and for this month of April, it will be Behind the Scenes of I Love Lucy, because I'm just not quite done with Lucy yet. Plus, we have the Movie of the Month every month as well, too. Please consider supporting the show and receiving some fun bonus content in return. Now, on to Lucy. Last week, I left off in the spring of 1950 and the birth of Desilu Productions. Lucy and Desi created this company out of 10 years of frustrations of studio and radio execs refusing to pair them together in any productions. So, they decided to just do it themselves. To kick off their new adventure with Desilu Productions, Lucy and Desi promoted themselves with a comedic traveling vaudeville act. Lucy's description of one act from their Mr. and Mrs. Vaudeville act was this, quote, Desi sang and played the bongo drums. I kept trying to butt into his nightclub act, end quote. Sound familiar? They were booked for performances all over the U.S., and the Palladium in London wanted them again too. But remember what prevented them from traveling to London to perform last time they had a traveling act? Lucy was pregnant again. She was equal parts excited and terrified. Justifiably, because sadly, Lucy suffered a second miscarriage. And this really, really broke her spirit. She was approaching 40 now, and Lucy was afraid her dreams of becoming a mother would never be. Lucy was pregnant again pretty quickly after that second devastating blow. She was optimistic again, but she did have to turn down a movie role that had been offered to her by Cecil B. DeMille that she really wanted so bad. The role of Angel in The Greatest Show on Earth. But it was very worth the sacrifice, and that part went to Gloria Graham. Lucy was determined to protect this pregnancy and the growing baby inside of her with everything she had. She canceled every obligation except for her radio show. She lived a peaceful and calm life, hoping her body could put its all into nurturing and protecting her child. It was such a happy time, and the best months of her marriage, according to Lucy. And then it finally happened. In early 1951, when Lucy was 4 months pregnant, CBS contacted Desi and said they were greenlighting a television pilot for Desilu Productions. A sitcom featuring the Cuban Desi Arnaz and the girl from upstate New York, Lucille Ball, as husband and wife. CBS was finally ready to brave showing this interracial union to the nation, a nation who had been well aware of its real-life existence for over a decade by this time. Television was still a very new medium, and it was not very well respected at all by the Hollywood elite. Most Hollywood actors wouldn't go anywhere near a television show in those early years. Nobody knew if it was going to be some kind of short-lived fad or if it would actually take off as a popular medium of entertainment that would stick. Lucy knew if she and Desi undertook this project and it failed, they may never work in Hollywood again. Was it worth the risk? Luckily for us, it sure was. There were issues at the beginning. Philip Morris wanted to sponsor them, which was fantastic, but they wanted the show to be filmed in New York. The technology at the time caused a show filmed live on the West Coast to appear in very poor condition on the East Coast. Well, Lucy did not want to move to New York. Another option would be to film the show, which they could still do in front of a live audience, but the cost of filming a show was very steep, twice the cost of a live broadcast. This prompted the first of many keen business deals negotiated by Lucy and Desi. In exchange for a $1,000 per week cut in pay, Desilu Productions would gain full ownership of the show instead of the original agreement that had CBS as half owner. With this move, Lucy and Desi were able to make these important decisions for their own show. But they also had a heavy price tag involved in setting up production for a filmed television show. The gamble paid off greater than they could have ever imagined. We are still watching I Love Lucy today because of this move. Next, they hired Academy Award-winning cameraman Carl Freund, and not satisfied with the television camera work he'd observed, he created his own system for the show. He devised they would use 3 cameras instead of just 1. One camera is set far back, one for midway shots, and one for close-ups. All 3 cameras would film simultaneously, and footage would be cut and spliced on the editing floor. This was a revolutionary technique devised specifically for I Love Lucy, and it is still widely used today. The next obstacle would be finding a studio space large enough to accommodate the sets, the 3-camera system, and a 100-seat studio audience. They secured an old, unused movie studio and put in a ton of work to create the sets and the studio audience seating. There were 3 permanent sets: the Ricardo living room, their kitchen, and their bedroom. And then a 4th set was customized to whatever was needed in each individual episode. To round out the show, they had cast Lucy's old RKO pal William Frawley and Broadway actress Vivian Vance as Fred and Ethel Mertz. And together, the 4 of them made entertainment history. I Love Lucy premiered on October 15th, 1951. And in Lucy's words, "I thought that I Love Lucy was a pleasant little situation comedy that might even survive its first season." She had no idea the magic she and Desi were creating, and that they were impacting the future for decades to come. I Love Lucy was an immediate hit and was the #1 show by its 20th episode, and it stayed in that #1 spot for 3 years. Lucille Ball said in her book, quote, "I Love Lucy has been called the most popular television show of all time. Such national devotion to one show can never happen again. There are too many shows on many more channels now." But in 1951 and 1952, our show changed the Monday night habits of America. Between 9 o'clock and 9:30, taxis disappeared from the streets of New York. Marshall Field's department store in Chicago hung up a sign that read, "We love Lucy too, so from now on we will be open Thursday nights instead of Monday." Calls across the nation dropped sharply during that half hour, as well as the water flush rate, as whole families sat glued to their seats, end quote. Desi and Lucy were the proud parents of a 3-month-old healthy baby girl when I Love Lucy premiered. Little Lucy Desiree Arnaz was born on July 17, 1951. Lucy and Desi were putting in hours and hours every day, 6 days per week, preparing for the premiere of I Love Lucy, so little Lucy spent most of her time with a nanny. But both Lucille and Desi adored their little girl so much and spent every second they were home with her. They were busy at work, but as exhausted as they were when they were home, they spent it attached to their little baby. Less than a year into the 6-year run of I Love Lucy, Lucy was pregnant again. They were thrilled, but they knew this might be the end of I Love Lucy. Women just weren't shown pregnant on screen. In fact, the word pregnant wasn't even acceptable to use. So, with Lucy, the star of the show, expecting another baby during filming of their show, they knew it was probably the end of their dream of finally working together on screen. Much to their surprise, though, CBS said, "Why don't you incorporate the baby into the show?" CBS knew what they had with this show, and they didn't want to lose it. So, with that, Ricky and Lucy Ricardo were expecting a baby on TV. Or specting, as Desi would put it. If you haven't seen the episode where Lucy tells Desi that they're having a baby, I just love it. It's one of my favorite I Love Lucy episodes. It's really, really cute, so I encourage you to go check it out. To make sure they were keeping the entire delicate situation in good taste and within censorship guidelines, there was a priest, a minister, and a rabbi on set when filming the scene shot when Lucy was pregnant. This was huge, and the whole nation was excited about the birth of both Lucy and Ricky's baby on screen and the birth of Lucy and Desi's baby in real life. Desiderio Alberto Arnaz IV was born on January 19, 1953 at 8:15 a.m. At 9:00 p.m. that very evening, 44 million Americans watched the arrival of baby Ricky Ricardo Jr. on I Love Lucy. That's 72% of television-owning Americans. More Americans tuned in for little Ricky's birth on a fictional television show than did for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation a few months later. This was all very carefully planned since Lucy had a scheduled C-section, so that was the birth of both babies that same day. Desi got his boy, the boy he always wanted, both in real life and on TV. Desi Arnaz Jr. was not the baby who played little Ricky, though. These two events sent the entire country into a frenzy. Flowers, cards, and gifts flooded the hospital and the Arnaz home. In all, 1 million people had sent cards, letters, gifts, and telegrams. The national hysteria continued for weeks, recalled Lucy. Everything was going great. And then, in September of 1953, Lucy was called to appear in a closed hearing with the House Un-American Activities Committee, along with her mother Dee Dee and her brother Freddie. The committee was out for blood, looking for anyone in Hollywood who had communist ties or beliefs. So why was the United States government looking at Lucille Ball and her family as being communist supporters? It all stemmed back to 1936 when Lucy's grandfather had asked her, Dee Dee, and Freddie to register and vote for his buddy, who was running for city council, on the communist ticket. So to appease her grandfather, Lucy did register, but she never voted. And now, 17 years later, she was being questioned about her ties to communism. The three of them were questioned extensively and completely cleared, assured that the hearing would be kept completely private from the public. Well, it wasn't. The hearing was leaked to one radio show, and within 2 days, Lucy and Desi were being swarmed by reporters. This kind of communist accusation had ruined many, many careers in Hollywood already. Even if found untrue, many celebrities were still blacklisted, simply by being considered to have communist ties. Could Lucille Ball survive this kind of public accusation? Even though she was officially cleared by both the FBI and the House Un-American Activities Committee? Well, she was Lucy, and everyone loved Lucy. So she came out okay. As Lucille Ball prepared to use their time slot to go on live and explain the situation to their I Love Lucy viewers, The chairman of the Un-American Activities Committee held a press conference that evening to publicly clear her. As Desi gave his little warm-up speech to their studio audience, he reiterated that his wife was never nor will never be a communist. "I was kicked out of Cuba," he said, "because of communism. We despise everything about it. Lucy is as American as Bernie Baruch and Ike Eisenhower. Now I want you to meet my favorite wife, my favorite redhead. In fact, that's the only thing right about her. And even that's not legitimate." Lucy and Desi were back on track, making audiences in every nook and cranny of the United States laugh until they cried every single week. They had been trying for over a decade to convince showrunners to allow them to play a married couple. And after taking the reins themselves, they proved to the world that they were not only convincing, but the best couple on screen. Now that they were insanely successful and wildly famous, MGM was finally able to cast them together as husband and wife. The movie was The Long, Long Trailer, and it was, of course, a huge hit. Lucy, Desi, and the kids left their beloved Desilu Ranch in 1955 and relocated to Beverly Hills, so their commute to the Desilu studio wasn't so long. They also had a home built adjacent to the Thunderbird Country Club in Palm Springs. But when Desi tried to join the club, he was denied because of his race. So he decided to build his own hotel next to a different country club and golf course, a hotel that allowed all guests of all colors. By the 4th season of I Love Lucy, Desi was getting overwhelmed, but he would never ever let it show at Desilu. He was a calm, kind, and fun boss at work. But the stress of running their show, plus the several other shows Desilu owned and 18-hour working days were coming through at home, as these things do. His fuse was getting short and his temper hot. And he was having affairs. He came from a culture where extramarital affairs did not affect your deep love for your spouse. Lucy, understandably, did not see it this way. To her, they were betrayals of that love. Lucy and Desi's plan had always been to keep I Love Lucy going for 5 years. But it wasn't that easy to tear away the #1 show from its beloved fans. So they went on for a 6th year. In 1957, I Love Lucy filmed its last show after 179 episodes. But Lucy and Desi weren't disappearing from America's television screens quite yet. They signed a $12 million contract with Westinghouse for a series of monthly 1-hour comedy specials, The Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz Show. This would free up a lot of time for them. It was during one of those shows that, on November 27, 1957, between the second and third acts, Desi and Lucy closed on a huge deal that would expand their empire. They bought the RKO Pictures lot, the place where it had all begun for Lucy. With the addition of this massive production property, they now owned an additional 33 sound stages. With it, they acquired former sets such as Tara from Gone with the Wind and fabulous gowns that had been worn by Carole Lombard and Katharine Hepburn. Lucy had gone from working all the time to having way too much free time on her hands. She wasn't the kind who could just sit around and do nothing. So in 1958, she decided to revitalize Leela Rogers' theater workshop. Lucy never would have imagined in her days of being guided by Leela Rogers on the RKO lot as a young actress just trying to get by in the business that she would someday own that RKO lot. It was such a very touching full circle moment for Lucy, so she decided to do something to pay forward the good that had been done for her. She renovated the theater and gave new life to Leela Rogers' theater workshop. She wanted to help young newcomers like she had been and teach them and help them however she could. Of the 16 original students, 9 of them went on to land television or movie contracts. "I found it a deeply satisfying experience," Lucy said. "It was my way of thanking Leela." Lucy had found a new project to keep her busy in this theater workshop, and Desi was very busy heading Desilu Productions. But what neither of them were setting aside time for was their marriage. And things had gotten pretty bad. They were either fighting, not speaking at all, or just completely avoiding each other. In the spring of 1959, Lucy planned a grand family trip to Europe as a last-ditch effort to save the marriage. But although her heart was in it, it didn't seem like Desi's was. They returned from Europe not speaking to each other, and Desi moved into the guest house. A little while later, he returned to Europe and was gone for several months. Things were not looking good. In Lucy's autobiography, she wrote, quote, "I realized we never really liked each other. We had a great attraction going for each other in the beginning, but we didn't approve of each other. He disapproved of my moderation and my conservatism. I was square," he said. "I disapproved of the way he worked too hard, played too hard, and was never moderate in anything. It was like living on top of a volcano. You never knew when it was going to erupt or why," end quote. Lucy went on to say that once Desi started sharing their personal unhappiness with the public, or at least not trying to hide it anymore, it became too humiliating and painful for her to endure. The nation's favorite marriage was over in March of 1960, just shy of their 20th anniversary. The end of television Camelot. In the final scene of the final episode of the Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz show, Lucy and Desi had to perform one of their famous kiss and makeup kisses, something they'd done in front of cameras, crew, and audiences hundreds of times. But this time was different. With tears in their eyes, they were giving each other their final kiss. They were saying goodbye to their love, their passion, their pain, their triumphs, their hope, and their television empire. Everyone in the presence of that kiss felt the heartache of it all. Desi Arnaz recalled the kiss like this, quote, "This was not just an ordinary kiss for a scene in a show. It was a kiss that would wrap up 20 years of love and friendship, triumphs and failures, ecstasy and sex, jealousy and regrets, heartbreaks and laughter, and tears. The only thing we were not able to hide were the tears," end quote. The fans of Lucy and Desi were not happy about this breakup, and they received thousands of letters from pleading fans begging them to stay together. They would remain together in business for now, but the intense roller coaster of love between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz was over.
Humans will do anything to avoid the actual work they said they'd do. While supposedly writing this trailer, I checked my slow cooker, restocked the fridge, took my blood pressure, it's dangerously high by the way, followed up on a WhatsApp conversation, picked up the post, checked in on the cats, tidied my desk, and made another coffee. That's genuinely true. Those are things I did while I should have been writing this script. And all I really need to tell you is that Undo is a podcast that examines productivity methods through the ages and tries to separate the brilliant from the bullshit so you can figure out how to design your own system that matches your brain chemistry. I mean, really, it's just a fun show you can listen to and tell yourself you're working. Finally, procrastination in podcast form. Anyway, Undo. It's a weird name, and if you type it into your phone, it might just move a bunch of photos out of your recycle bin. Don't worry, just head to undo.fm, that's undo.fm, and click on all of the buttons. Undo, because my doorbell just rang, and that means I get to do something else instead of make this trailer.
To help ease this major transition, 49-year-old Lucille Ball began her new season of life on Broadway in the play Wildcat. "I'd never been a singer," Lucy said of this challenge, not even in the bathtub. Not only that, but it was a very physically challenging role. It would be tough. But Lucy was tough, and she was going to give it a try. She only left the production with 2 broken fingers, several bruises, a pulled tendon, and a sprained ankle. 3 times sprained. It wasn't easy, but girl did it. Better yet, she made another wild leap in this new season of life. she fell in love. A friend had introduced her to a man named Gary Morton after one of her New York Broadway performances, and they instantly hit it off. Gary was a comedian too. He performed nightclub acts. He had shared bills with the likes of Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Lena Horne, Sammy Davis Jr., and Milton Berle. And get this, he had never once seen Lucille Ball on TV. I Love Lucy and the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour ran for a collective 9 years, and he never saw a second of it. He must have been the only person in America that could say that. Lucy said of their meeting, quote, "I realized Gary had the natural humor of someone who loves to laugh and wants everyone to laugh with him. That made two of us," end quote. Lucy liked Gary before she loved him, not like how it happened with Desi. He was easygoing and a great listener. He was the calm to Desi's fire. He was good for her soul. They just sound like a really great match. No wonder their mutual friend hooked them up. Well, Gary was in love with Lucy right off the bat, but Lucy was hesitant to jump into another marriage. A part of her thought she was damaged goods, that she couldn't make any man happy. Gary wasn't pushy with his proposals, but he was consistent enough. He even met with Lucy's lawyers and signed away any future rights to her money. He didn't want her money or her fame. He just wanted her. Lucy realized she needed to stop fretting over her past and embrace her future. After consulting her and Desi's children, now 10 and 8 years old, and making sure they were okay with it, Lucy accepted Gary's proposal. 50-year-old Lucille Ball married 37-year-old Gary Morton in a small church ceremony on November 19, 1961. Life was good. Lucy also used this grand time of change in life to reevaluate her priorities, to make sure she had a healthy work-life balance. She had been putting so much time and energy into work, and she realized she needed to step back and make sure that she was giving enough love and attention to both herself and her family. She connected with therapist Norman Vincent Peale, and together with the book he recommended called The Art of Selfishness by David Seabury, he changed Lucy's life. Between the two, Lucy learned that without taking care of herself, she couldn't take care of others, including in business. "This little book revolutionized my life," she said. "It taught me to worry less about all the outside factors in my life and take command of me." This may sound like common sense to us today, but it really wasn't a widespread accepted thought for women in the early 1960s. About 6 months after Lucy and Gary were married, Desi approached her about doing a new television show about two women raising their children on their own. Always looking for a creative outlet, she agreed. Under one condition. She wouldn't even consider doing it with anyone other than Vivian Vance. The two had such great working chemistry on I Love Lucy, and they both just loved and respected each other so much. Lucy would only do the show if Vivian would do it with her. Luckily, Vivian agreed. The Lucy Show ran for 6 seasons, full of similar hilarious comedic antics that audience missed so much from her on their television screens. Desi Arnaz had been running Desilu Productions for 11 years when he asked Lucy to come back and do that show. And he stepped in as executive producer for The Lucy Show. 3 of the Fab 4 from I Love Lucy were back together again, but not for long. The stress of running Desilu for so long was really taking its toll on Desi. He had been burning the candle at both ends for so long, and that just isn't healthy. He was only 45 years old, but he was ready to retire. So, in November of 1961, Lucille Ball bought out Desi's controlling interests of Desilu Productions, and at the urging of the board of directors, became the new president of the company. With this, Lucille Ball became the first female president of a major film studio. I think it is such a beautiful thing that happened there. Desi knew he needed to step back, but he wanted to ease Lucy back into the spotlight first. He wanted to work with her one last time, and he wanted to make sure that their company was in very capable hands. I love that for them. Under Lucy's leadership, Desilu produced 2 shows that would go on to be mega successful franchises, Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Desilu execs strongly discouraged Lucille Ball from greenlighting either of these because of the expensive costs of sets, costumes, and makeup. But she went ahead with them anyway. If it hadn't been for her, Mission Impossible and certainly not Star Trek would never have gotten on the air, said Desilu executive Ed Hawley. Lucille Ball ran Desilu for an additional 6 years. This gave her time to properly say goodbye to her and Desi's baby, the little company they had started from nothing and built an empire out of. By 1967, she was ready to say goodbye. Desilu was sold to Gulf and Western Paramount for $17 million, $10 million of it going directly to Lucy. Adjusted for inflation, that $17 million would be $162.5 million today, and Lucy's cut would be $95.5 million. Enough to live quite the nice retirement life on. But Lucy wasn't ready to retire quite yet. She was 56 years old and definitely had the funds to live whatever kind of life she wanted without working another day of her life. But that wasn't Lucy. First, she finished up the last year of The Lucy Show, and then she immediately started her next show, Here's Lucy, which ran from 1968 to 1974, and co-starred her 2 teenage children. And she filmed a movie, Yours, Mine, and Ours, with Henry Fonda. Lucy's best friend and greatest supporter, her mother Dee Dee, passed away on July 20th, 1977, at the age of 84. Lucy lost her dear friend and co-star Vivian Vance just 2 years later on August 17, 1979. 2 very impactful losses for Lucy. Desi Arnaz was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1986 at the age of 69 and was told he was almost at the end. Lucy went to visit him, equipped with videotapes of I Love Lucy. Lucy and Desi watched several episodes together, reminiscing, praising one another, laughing, and crying. 3 weeks later, Lucy and Desi's daughter, Lucy, called her mother and said it was almost time. She held the phone to her father's ear so her mother could speak to him. I love you, Desi, I love you, Lucy said through her tears. Desi had been stripped of all of his energy as his body prepared to depart this world, but he found enough strength to respond, I love you too, honey. He died 2 days later. Daughter Lucy didn't realize it at the time, but the day her parents spoke their last words to each other was their wedding anniversary. Lucille Ball continued to work here and there doing television movies and specials throughout the mid-'80s. The most notable being the 1985 movie called Stone Pillow, where she plays the dramatic role of a homeless woman. It was just really difficult to get that woman to sit still. Lucille Ball's final acting project was an unfortunately failed sitcom called Life with Lucy in 1986. Only 8 episodes aired. Lucy was 75 years old. When the show was canceled, it absolutely devastated Lucy. She wanted to perform. She didn't need to, and now she felt like the industry she gave so much to didn't want her anymore. That threw me, she told Joan Rivers. I cried. My God, I cried. But her fans came through for her. The proof being in the thousands and thousands of fan letters she received expressing their love and adoration for her. And this really, really helped her. Lucy was truly retired now. She feverishly cleaned her house, she spent time with her children and grandchildren, and she ran backgammon tournaments, her favorite game. And some of you may remember from my Agnes Moorehead episode that the 2 were neighbors and spent a lot of time playing cards together. Lucy just loved to be busy and to be around people. She thrived on that energy. Sadly, Lucille Ball only had a few years left to enjoy this life. Before I say those sad last words that end Lucy's story, I want to share the story of her last public appearance. Lucy and her dear friend and one of her favorite co-stars, Bob Hope, were teamed up as presenters at the 1989 Academy Awards. The crowd went wild for them, giving them a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. Lucy was divine in a black sequin gown with a high slit that went right up to her thigh. As she and her husband Gary were leaving the after-party that night, fans who had gathered outside cheered for Lucy. Her reply to them was to slip her leg out of that sexy slit and do a high kick, and then blew them kisses through a very happy smile. I mean, she probably had a few cocktails at the after-party, but I just love this so much. This was the last time Lucille Ball graced the public with her presence. 3 weeks after that Academy Awards ceremony, Lucy suffered a ruptured aorta. She underwent a 6.5-hour open-heart surgery, and the prognosis was good. The hospital received an average of 5,000 calls every day she was there, wishing her a speedy recovery. Fax machines jammed. A flood of flowers, cards, and gifts arrived for her. This made Lucy so happy as she recovered. Fans also left notes and cards outside of her home, but Lucy would never return home to see them. While still in the hospital, Lucy suffered another tear in her aorta and went into cardiac arrest. Lucille Ball was pronounced dead at 5:47 a.m. on April 26, 1989. Before I move back onto our final bullet points, I just want to circle back to I Love Lucy for a minute. This show was a pioneer of sitcom television. It wasn't the first, but it was the first best. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz put their blood and tears into that show to make sure that it was the best product they could possibly share with the nation, and eventually the world. I just want to share some things that they revolutionized during the making of this iconic show, I Love Lucy. First, they were the first multi-ethnic couple on screen. They were the first couple to have a baby in an episode. They were the first television-made millionaires. They revolutionized the 3-camera filming system. They filmed with 35mm film for exceptionally better quality. They taped instead of shot live, and we all thank them for that today. And coinciding with this, they invented the rerun. They made performing in front of a live audience the norm. By performing in front of an audience, Lucy and Desi received their boosts of energy from their audiences, and they got to form an intimate relationship with their fans. The weekly work schedule for I Love Lucy played out like this. Monday was the week's episode table read. Tuesday was rehearsal. Wednesday was the camera rehearsal. Thursday was full camera run-through. And Friday, they performed in front of a live audience. Then they could pull camera footage from Thursday shooting if they didn't get quite what they needed on Friday. The situation comedy was fairly new when I Love Lucy premiered, but still it had been around for about 5 years. But Desi and Lucy knew they didn't want to just step in to be just another mediocre sitcom. They didn't want to do everything the same as everyone else did. They were not afraid to think outside the box. They are television icons. We all love you, Lucy. Now it's time to share some other interesting things I learned during my research. Bullet point number 1. Lucille Ball hired her first personal maid in 1939 once she felt she was finally affluent enough to do so, right around the time she started making $1,000 per week salary with RKO. She hired a woman named Harriet McCain, and she kept her as her personal maid and close confidant for her whole life. Lucy told the story in her book that in the early 60s, when she was appearing on Broadway, the apartment building she was staying at did not allow Black people to ride in the front elevator. "I changed that rule in a hurry," said Lucy. "Harriet and I were the first to integrate those $1,300 per month apartments, I'm glad to say." Bullet point number 2. Lucy showed up to a publicity shot for the LA Tuberculosis Society in 1950, where she was to pose with an X-ray machine. She had been suffering from a cold, but when she stood in front of the machine, a tech said to her, "Pardon me, Miss Ball, but this X-ray shows that you have some kind of pneumonia." So straight to the hospital she went, where she stayed for the next 9 days. Bullet point number 3. Lucille Ball's beloved grandmother Floribel had been a twin. Not only that, but she and her twin were allegedly one of 5 sets of twins for her parents, according to Lucy's autobiography. Bullet point number 4. Lucy Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr. both went into show business, not surprising given who their parents were. They both began as teenagers on their mother's show, Here's Lucy, that began in 1968. From there, Lucy Arnaz went on to have a successful theater acting career and nightclub acts. Desi Jr. was a drummer in a successful band, as well as doing several television and movie appearances. Bullet point number 5. Lucille Ball died on her dear friend Carol Burnett's 56th birthday. Carol received a flower delivery from Lucy just hours after her death, an annual tradition Lucy did for Carol. She spent one of her last conscious moments on Earth thinking of her friend. In conclusion, wow, Lucille Ball. How do you put her in words? I think it's safe to say there has never, ever been another person like Lucille Ball. Not before her and not since. Her brand of comedy was so unique and so Lucy. One of the most remarkable things about Lucille Ball was her willingness to appear ridiculous. She was absolutely gorgeous, but she wasn't afraid to appear hideous for the sake of comedy. Countless comedic actresses have credited Lucille Ball as their #1 inspiration. She inspired others to follow in her footsteps, and her pioneering within the industry made it an easier ride for all of them. Very similar to Ida Lupino, Lucille Ball did not consider herself a feminist. She was just trying to do what fueled her soul and succeed in the field that she wanted to excel in. She just happened to be a woman trying to do that in a time when it was much more difficult for women to get where they were trying to go. Women's lib doesn't interest me, Ball said later in life. I've been liberated all my life. I'm so liberated, my husband does everything for me. Lucille Ball was a pioneer of equality, whether she intended to or not. Lucy wore slacks in her hometown of Jamestown, New York, when women wouldn't dare leave their house in such a manner. She traveled alone to the city, also in a time when young women would usually be chaperoned. She married a Cuban man when that was very risque to do. She stood up for racism, segregation, and LGBT rights. Lucille Ball would not put up with inequality. She was strong, determined, independent, and very driven. Yet she was kind, sympathetic, loyal, and nurturing. Our world for a very long time didn't think a woman could be all of these things at once. But we can, and Lucy helped prove that to the world. Lucille Ball is our queen. Thank you, Lucille Ball, for your amazing talent, your hilarious energy, and your incredible work ethic. You showed us that women can indeed do hard things. We can do it all if we want to. I want to add a million other thank yous to you, Miss Ball, because it just seems wrong to leave it at that. I guess just thank you for being our queen. And thank you all for listening. My heart is a little broken now that I'm done with my research into Lucy's life. So, like I said at the top, I want to give you more. This month's bonus episode over on Patreon will be a deep dive into I Love Lucy. I shared a little about the iconic show today, but there is a lot more I want to share. So if you're interested in that and all of the past bonus content, hop on over to patreon.com/Stars of the Golden Age podcast to join. So you'll receive that and all of my past bonus content and all of the future bonus content as long as you want to stick around. And I would really, really appreciate your support of the show. Also, please rate, review, and subscribe where you listen to your podcasts and follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. And please feel free to message me if you have any episode suggestions and I'll bump your request to the top of the list. Thank you all so much for your continued support. For this episode, I used Lucy's autobiography, Love, Lucy by Lucille Ball, and The Amazing Book, aka Lucy by Sarah Royal. And of course, IMDB.